all, a great evening. Welcome to Narayana IAS Academy, and this is yet another live session where you are meeting me. That is, I am Sureka Bhaskar here to take up the daily news analysis for you guys, which is very important, where we will be discussing very important as well as relevant topics for the UPSC CSE examination. Okay, so let us actually kickstart our day with our daily routine or the ritual, that is without motivation. What it says here, read today so that you will lead tomorrow. It is very simple to understand, isn't it? That is, every day or every minute we procrastinate our reading for this particular examination, that means we are not going to do it tomorrow. Okay, so only if you persevere and if you're consistent enough. That is why a couple of days earlier, ago, I would have actually told you discipline is very important than motivation, because discipline is something which is, I can say, which is actually, a negative thing. Not every one of us can be disciplined every day. Not every one of us can prepare every day. So that is what UPSC actually demands. It does not check what is your intellect. It actually checks your endurance. Okay, so with this, let us actually kickstart our discussion today. So what are the topics that we are picking up for today's DNA discussion? Is that the first one is, or has been taken from page number 17 of the Indian Express, what latest economic data show. Okay, so this particular article talks about the two important data sets that have actually been released by the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. That is one on India's economic performance, and next one is the provisional estimates. Okay, so what do you mean by the provisional estimate? This is nothing but the initial data. It's not the final data. Okay, so it is the initial data that is actually given on the key economic or the key performing indicators in an economy. For example, your GDP, your GVA, etc. is actually calculated, or it is actually given through this provisional estimates. So recently the MOSPI has actually come out with these set of data, that is one on the provisional estimates, next one on the performance of India's economy throughout this particular year. Okay, so we'll be discussing this one, and hence we will be discussing what are the different methods of calculating the national income. We will be discussing what are the methods, like whether India follows the the production method or the income method or the expenditure method, out of which is the method that India actually has adopted in order to calculate the national income. All that we will be discussing in detail. Also, we will be discussing about how manufacturing or agriculture has actually been performing in the previous year. Okay, so this is going to be your mains based article. Okay, now moving forward, the second article is a prelims article, which again has been picked up from page number 1 of the Indian Express. So on the occasion of 300th birth anniversary of Ahilyabai Holkar. So as you know, UPSC is actually fond of the social reformers. Okay, whether they are the religious reformers or somebody who has actually brought about a paradigm shift to the social landscape of India, becomes very important. So today happens to be the 300th birth anniversary of Ahilyabai Holkar. Let us actually see how prominent or significant figure she was. Okay, so how did she actually increase the prominence or the importance of the Malwa as well as the Maheshwar region of Madhya Pradesh? Malwa is what? This Madhya Pradesh and the Rajasthan regions, right? So how important was her role over there? And she was actually a motivator or reconstructor of the temples. Okay, so that actually includes the reconstruction of the Somnath temple as well as the Kailash temple, and also we will be looking at her dedication towards the handloom industry. That is why we have the current Maheshwari sari, which is under the GI tag of India. All that we will see here. Okay, so this is going to be your prelims article. The next one is your articles from page number 7 of the Indian Express. Retired government NPS subscribers with minimum 10 years can claim extra benefits under the UPS. Okay, so here it is very important for us to understand what you mean by these different kinds of pension schemes. Okay, so prior to 2004, there was something called as the old pension scheme. Okay, so this was a guaranteed pension that was given by the central government to the government employees. Okay, however, after the NDA government was elected to power, what happened? The old pension scheme was done away with, and the pension scheme was made, inclusive. Okay, so this actually included the government workers also. It included the unorganized workers and the self-employed workers. Everybody can actually contribute to this particular national pension scheme. So this was what called as the national pension scheme. Okay, so now there is another pension scheme called as the UPS, which is nothing but the unified pension scheme, which is nothing but it combines the characteristic features of the OPS and the NPS, and we will be seeing different characteristic features of the UPS as well. Okay, so let us discuss about this, and this is going to be the prelims article, and the last article for today has been picked up from page number 5 of the Hindu. Production of indigenous light combat aircraft will be increased for timely deliveries to IAF. Okay, so the light combat aircrafts are what? These are very lighter in weight, as well as they are used for combating purposes, and they are deployed in the Indian Air Forces. Okay, so this is why this particular topic is important, and that is why HAL, Hindustan Aeronautic Limited, has actually decided in order to pace up the production of these LCA so that they can be deployed in the Indian Air Force as soon as possible. Okay, and towards the end of the session, we will be solving a mains practice question, and after that we will be solving what you call it as the MCQs of the topics that were discussed yesterday, post which we will see 2 or 3 MCQs that have actually been designed based on today's topics. Okay, so let us move forward to the first article. Okay, so what does the first article say? What the latest economic data show. Okay, so recently, as I told you, the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation had released the data sets, okay, on India's national income, and the size of the economy. Okay, size of economy. So this actually gives us an insight on what is the growth of India's economy and how has been the health of different sectors of the economy. For example, how is manufacturing done, how is services done, how is agriculture done, and what is this data or the measure that gives us complete insights or the understanding into these different sectors and their respective performances becomes very, very important for our examination. Okay, because very, very simple terms are being asked, but then this actually requires conceptual clarity. Okay, even this time you had the question on capital expenditure, you had the revenue expenditure, then there were questions on the fiscal deficit as well as the primary deficit. So these kind of economic terms become very, very important. Now let us actually move forward. So let us actually see, this is important because national income accounting is very, very important. So what is the measure that India actually, or the method India adopts in order to calculate the national income, that is the expenditure method. The other two are the production as well as the income methods. Okay, next one we will be discussing about economic growth. Okay, we will be discussing about various terms like GVA, and then we'll talk about real GDP, we'll talk about the nominal GDP, etc. Okay, and this is important for both the prelims as well as the mains examination under GS paper 3 Indian economy and issues relating to mobilization of resources and growth. Okay, now let us actually move forward and see one of the previous year questions. That is, in 2021 there was a question in the mains examination, that is, explain the difference between the computing methodology of India's GDP before the year 2015 and after 2015. Okay, so very, very important. So you need to have complete understanding about the national income accounting for both the prelims as well as the mains examination. Now let us start with the article. Just give me a minute. Okay, so let us now continue. Okay, yes, the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, that is MOSPI, has recently released 2 sets of data. One is on what? India's economic performance. Okay, so one is India's economic performance. This is for the last quarter, that is the quarter 4 of the financial year 2024-2025, because the financial year starts in the month of April and ends by March, right? So this is actually the last quarter starting from January to March. Okay, and this is one data set on India's economic performance, and the other one is the provisional estimates. Okay, provisional estimates for the complete year. Okay, full financial year, that is FY25. Okay, so why these are important? These are actually important to understand the evolving trajectory of India's growth or India's economic growth, especially if you have to know what is the GDP growth of India, how has the stability or the health of different sectors of the economy been, as well as other trends since 2014. Okay, so this is why this particular thing is important. Now let us see how is the national income measured. Okay, so economic growth of an economy is actually measured using two methods, okay, or two metrics. Okay, so this is the expenditure method of national income accounting, where two metrics are used. One is actually your GDP, that is the gross domestic product. Next one is the gross value added. Okay, so GDP and the GVA. Okay, so what do you mean by GDP? This is calculated by, what do you mean by GDP? This is nothing but the value of all the goods and services that is produced within the territory over a particular year. So this is what is called as GDP. Okay, so what does that mean? Here, since we actually include the expenditure method, it involves the expenditure that is actually done by an individual or a company or the government in order to, in order to buy, okay, a particular good or a service. Okay, so let's read now. So this particular GDP is calculated by adding up the expenditure which is made by its economy, okay, including the spending of either it's an individual or the government or the private businesses. Okay, so this actually gives us a holistic picture of the demand side of the economy. That is why we buy, because we need a particular product, right? So this actually showcases the demand for that particular product. Okay, so this is what it shows, demand side of the economy, whereas the other metric is called as the gross value added. Okay, so this actually discusses about the supply side of the economy. Okay, this is the supply side of the economy, that is how much each sector actually contributes at each stage of production to a particular product or a service, is what is called as the GVA. How much income is added at each stage of production is called as your gross value added. For example, you have milk, right? Milk is say around half a liter is 30 rupees. Okay, now how you're value adding it? You are making ice creams out of it, okay, and selling it at 150. So what is the value that you have actually added here? 120. Okay, so this is called as GVA. Now let us see how both GDP as well as GVA, these two metrics of the expenditure method, are linked to each other. So both of them are actually measuring the performance of the economy only. So that is one commonality over here, and the relationship can be given as this particular formula, that is GDP is equal to how much of value is actually added to a particular product in the economy at each stage of production, plus the taxes which are earned by the government minus the subsidies that are given for a particular product by the government. Okay, so government, they gives a lot of subsidies, right, for fertilizers, for seeds, for other purposes as well. So this is what is the calculation and the link between GDP and GVA. Okay, so the Ministry of Statistics, this provides both the GDP and GVA in nominal terms. What do you mean by nominal terms? Nominal terms means without being adjusted for inflation. Okay, for example, if the value of the goods and services that is actually produced in one full year is 1000 crores, okay, and last year it has been around 1500 crores. Okay, so this is actually your nominal GDP. Here the inflation that has actually happened between these two periods are not taken into account. That is why it always looks bigger and it always feels like India's economy is performing better. Okay, but when you adjust it for inflation, okay, that is if you measure what is the amount of inflation, the percentage of inflation that has happened, then that actually gives you your real GDP. Okay, so real terms is adjusted for inflation. So both their both the data actually have their own analytical importance. Okay, that is why both are being calculated by MOSPI. So if you see, why are the estimates provisional? Provisional means what? I told you these are not final, right? These are the initial data that has actually been given. Okay, so the GDP data or the estimates of any of the key indicators, they actually undergo alterations or a revision so many times. Okay, so first your advanced estimates 1 is actually given, then your advanced estimates 2 is given, then only your provisional estimates is actually given. So if you see, in 2013 and 14, comparing it with 2024 and 25. Okay, so here your nominal GDP, which is not adjusted for inflation, or let's take it over here. 2014, it has been in lakh crores. Okay, so it has been 124.7 crores. Okay, where if you see the nominal GDP, now it is 330.7 crores. Similarly, if you see the growth rate, in terms of growth rate, what has been the nominal GDP? It is 11% and now it is actually 9.8%. Okay. Next one, the real GDP. Here it is actually adjusted for inflation. So it has been 105.3 in lakh crores. Can you see the difference between nominal and this one? Nominal is always high because it is not adjusted for inflation. That is why it's 124. This is 105. And now if you see, this is 188. Okay, this is in lakh crore. And then this real GDP growth rate, it has been 7.4 and now it stands at 6.5. Okay, so by looking at what is your average yearly growth rate, if you actually take the yearly average, then it results in something called as CAGR, compounded annual growth rate. Okay, so this is what you have to understand from this particular image. Now let's move towards understanding why are the estimates provisional. Okay, so why are they not final? When does the final data come? Final data actually comes 2 years after the provisional estimates is actually given. That is when you will know how your economy has really performed. Okay, so nominal GDP growth rate, let's see. So India's nominal GDP, that is the one which is not adjusted for inflation, this reached, just a minute, I think there has been something missed over here. Just a minute. There's something missed in this particular slide. Let me just take you guys through that as well. Yes. So they have actually forgotten to include this in the content over here on the board. So I will tell you why are the estimates provisional. Okay, because the estimates that are released are termed provisional because they are revised over the next few years. First thing, they are revised over next few years. Let's see, for any financial year, the GDP, I told you, it actually undergoes multiple revision. Okay, so in the month of January, there is advanced estimates 1. Okay, so it is advanced estimate 1 in January. Then by the end of February, what happens? Some other, some of the most important data from that particular quarter is actually added. And then what happens? The second advanced estimates, that is end of February, you have the advanced estimates 2. Okay, by adding some more data. Okay, then by the end of May, you have the provisional estimates. All this I already told you. These provisional estimates, again, now it is 2025, right? You have the provisional estimates. Once again, it will be revised after 1 year by adding the important data from this particular quarter, that is January to March. And then what happens? The final data will be released by 2027. Do you understand? So this is what is the reason for why are your estimates provisional and it is not final? Okay. Now let us actually move forward in understanding the key takeaway of the data. First one is nominal GDP growth. So India's nominal GDP, which is not adjusted for inflation, that reached around 330 trillion. Okay. And if you actually see in US dollar, India is a 3.87 trillion economy and we are aiming to become a $5 trillion economy. Okay. And this nominal growth has been 8.9% and this is actually relatively modest. Okay. However, it is the sixth slowest since the liberalization that actually took place, that is the LPG reforms where India's economy opened up, okay, in 1991. Moreover, the trend of nominal GDP growth has been in the decline, okay, in the previous years, and this is important. Anyways, this is just the data set that is given, but whatever comes in your economic survey as well as the budget, you need to study that for the examination. So the CAGR since 2014-15 stands at, that is the compounded annual growth rate of this nominal GDP, has been 10.3%. If you see the next one, again the real GDP. So this shows the size, this actually shows, I'm sorry, while the nominal GDP shows the size of the economy, the real GDP, which is adjusted for inflation, is more suitable in order to compare the economic performance of your country with the rest of the world. Okay, so that is the difference. And if you see in the financial year 2025, this real GDP grew by 6.5% and that reached 188 trillion rupee. Okay, so this is actually a slowdown from the 7.2 growth rate. Okay, again, next one, there is actually a gap between what? The real GDP as well as the nominal GDP, and this gap only reflects the total amount of inflation or the percentage of inflation that has occurred in the economy. Okay, so this is what this particular real GDP has actually said. Next one, the gross value added and the sectoral health. How is the health of different sectors, whether manufacturing has performed better than agriculture or vice versa, is what we need to know. Okay, so the real gross value added across three main sectors. Okay, so they have actually taken what all sectors? Agriculture activities, then they have taken industries or manufacturing, and then they have taken services. Okay, so these three, that is the gross value added by these three sectors, actually grew by around 6.4%. Okay, and this is actually down from 8.6% from the previous year. Okay, so this has the performance or the gross value added has decreased. However, none of these sectors have achieved anywhere close to 6% since the financial year 20%. In the year 2020. Okay, now GVA, this only is considered as a more accurate measure of the economy because it actually shows the performances of different sectors and it also excludes, okay, what is actually the impact of your taxes, okay, then what is the impact of your subsidies, because both these can actually distort your GDP calculation. Okay, so this provides a clearer or gives a clearer picture of how the economy or each sector of the economy has actually performed. Now let's move forward and see manufacturing sector. It has lagged behind agriculture. So if you see here, manufacturing sector grown at a slower pace, okay, than even the agriculture sector. The CAGR, compounded annual growth rate of the manufacturing, has been only 4.4, whereas agricultural activities is around 4.72. Okay, this you can see the underperformance of the manufacturing sector, and so that is why we actually see a lot of unemployment that is actually happening, a lot of reverse migration where the youth are moving away from the urban to the rural areas. All these are happening and there is more involvement or indulgence in the agricultural activities. That is why agriculture has performed better. Next one, despite the government's push through the initiatives like Make in India as well as Atmanirbhar. So Make in India was launched in 2016. Okay. However, there has actually been a lag in the performance of the manufacturing sector. Whereas you see globally, countries like you have China and you have US as well as the EU, they are actively what to say, promoting your domestic manufacturing. Okay, why? Because there are a lot of geopolitical tensions, there are a lot of trade war that is going on, the sanctions, as well as what to say, the tariffs that are actually being imposed. For example, the recent US tariff on China, US tariff on India, that is the reciprocal tariff that we would have discussed. All that is happening. That is why they are making this manufacturing as a priority sector, and hence, you know, we can actually see that slowing down of the manufacturing activities is a big concern for India. Okay, now let us actually move forward. This is the second article we will discuss. So in the first article, we discussed about the two sets of data that the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation has come up with. One is on India's economic performance, and the next one is the provisional data, and we saw why is it called as a provisional data, and we saw the national income accounting method that India has adopted. This is nothing but your expenditure method, and in that also we actually saw two important metrics, that is, one was your GDP. Okay, this is again nominal as well as real, and then again we saw the gross value added. Okay, so again we actually saw which gives a comparatively better picture. So this is what we saw. Okay, and finally we looked at how different sectors have actually performed, where manufacturing has not performed well when compared to that of your agriculture sector, and this is why we actually have different fall in the employment rates, that is the unemployment rate, the reverse migration, etc. Okay, so here we are done with the first article. Now moving to the second article. Today happens to be the 300th anniversary of Lokmata Devi Ahilyabai Holkar. Okay, so this is actually from the Indian Express. So we'll be discussing about this personality as well as the Holkar dynasty, important for both prelims as well as the mains examination. So if you see, in the previous year, there was a question on, the association, the Henry Louis Vivian de Rosio, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, and these people, which of the following established Hindu college at Calcutta? So the socio-religious reformers, as well as their establishment and their contribution, okay, to the upliftment of the India society becomes extremely important. Okay, now let's actually move forward into the topic. So 31st May, that is today, actually marks the 300th birth anniversary of Ahilyabai Holkar. Okay, now let us actually move forward and see about Ahilyabai Holkar. So she is Miss Ahilyabai Holkar. So birth and background, she was actually born on the 31st May 1725 in the Ahmednagar district, Ahmednagar of Maharashtra. Okay, don't confuse. So Ahmednagar of Maharashtra. In 1733, that is, this is 1725, right? In 1733, at a very, very early age itself, she was actually married to a Holkar. Which Holkar? It was Khande Rao Holkar, and he happened to be, Khande Rao Holkar happened to be the son of Malhar Rao Holkar. Okay, who's actually Malhar Rao Holkar was the founder of the Holkar dynasty. Okay, Holkar dynasty and the ruler of Malwa. Okay, understood? So born in 1733, she married the son of Malhar Rao Holkar, who happened to be the founder of the Holkar dynasty. Okay, and Malhar Rao Holkar, he actually was a officer. He was an officer of the Peshwa Baji Rao. Okay, so these people were the Marathas, right? Under Marathas there were different groups like the Holkars, the Scindias, the Gaikwads, as well as the Bhosles, and we are now discussing about the Holkars. Okay, so that is what he was, an officer of Peshwa Baji Rao, and he was posted in Malwa in order to collect the Chaut and Sardesh Mukhi. These were all the taxes, okay, that the Marathas had to collect from the places outside their kingdom. So this is what is the Chaut and the Sardesh Mukhi. So this was around, Chaut was 25% and Sardesh Mukhi was 10%, I believe. Please do check. Okay, so 35% of a particular place's revenue had to be paid to these Marathas. Okay, So after the husband's death, okay, Khanderao Holkar, what was the practice that was followed? Then we had social evils, right, like sati and all. So what happened? She was about to perform sati, but then the father-in-law Malhar Rao Holkar actually dissuaded that and instead made her focus on education and gave her education on administration as well as welfare. Okay, so this was the story so far. Next, what happened? She rose to power after the death of who? Malhar Rao Holkar in the year 1766, and her son Male Rao Holkar. This actually happens to be Ahilyabai Holkar's son. Okay, in 1767, she actually took up the leadership of this Malwa region and started ruling Indore in 1767. Then also she appointed Tukoji Rao Holkar as her military commander, and she shifted the capital to Maheshwar. And currently, where is Maheshwar? Maheshwar is in the current day Madhya Pradesh. Okay. Now, social and economic reforms, she is actually considered to be the rebuilder or the renovator of the temples. Okay. So, restoration of sacred temples, which included the Somnath temple. Where is it located? In the Gujarat coast along the Arabian Sea, and this is actually believed to be one of the first Jyotirlingas. What is Jyotirlingas? These are devotional shrines dedicated to Lord Shiva. And the Somnath temple had actually been invaded by Mahmud Ghazni in 1024, and then followed by attack by the Delhi Sultanate, and after that by Aurangzeb in 1707. So this was one of the temples where she actually took up the restoration activities. And following that, we have the Kashi Vishwanath Jyotirlingas, which is actually located at Varanasi in Uttar Pradesh. Okay, so this is in the western bank of river Ganga, and this is also one of the 12 Jyotirlingas. Okay, next one. Again, she built thousands of dharmshalas throughout India, and then she is actually a patron of learning. So she motivated or accommodated a number of the patrons or the scholars and poets in her kingdom. That is the Kushali Ram, Marathi poet Moropant, as well as Sahir Ananta Fandi. Okay, so these people were accommodated. Followed that, she also worked for women education, widow remarriage, and firmly opposed sati. Then her rule uplifted the tribal communities like the Bhils, the Konds, etc., as well as the people who are considered to be the lower caste people. So under her leadership, Maheshwar and Indore, both these places again in Madhya Pradesh only, they gained prominent significance and they became important trade centers, and that is where the handloom industry of Maheshwar actually rose, or it actually grew into prominence, and that is where you have the Maheshwari saris, which has the GI tag. Okay. Finally, she passed away in 1795 at the age of 70, and John Key, the British historian, gave her the title the Philosopher Queen, okay, because of her role which she actually played here. So if you see the Holkar dynasty, these people were important constituent of the Maratha Confederacy. Okay, the others I told you, the Gaikwads, then I told you the Scindias, as well as the Bhonsles. Okay. This is a powerful alliance of the Maratha clans. Okay, so basically, if I have to tell you the story, they actually fought with the British. They were against the British, but then British defeated them. Very, very simple. Okay, at the Battle of Mahidpur, where the Treaty of Mandsaur was signed in the year 1818. Okay, now let's move forward to the third article, that is the UPS system. Okay, so UPS system has been launched, and here the retired people who were enrolled in the NPS, that is the National Pension Scheme, can actually be enrolled there before June 30th if they are eligible under certain criteria. So this is what is the article. Okay, so here we'll discuss about the three different pension schemes, and then this again is important for prelims as well as the mains examination under government policies and intervention. So here you have a question in the year 2016 about the Atal Pension Yojana. So all the schemes as well as the provisions, and who are the beneficiaries or the the people who are eligible for that becomes very, very important. Okay, so one question on Atal Pension Yojana. Let's move forward and see why this article has been in the news. So the Unified Pension Scheme has been launched for whom? The retired central government employees who are already under the national pension scheme. And this, but if you actually become from the national pension scheme, if you enroll yourself in the UPS, you will get a one-time payment and a monthly pension top up and the arrears with the interest, okay, provided that you actually fit the eligibility criteria. Okay, now let's move forward to understand the background. Okay, so first, before 2004, I actually told you that there was the old pension scheme. This was a guaranteed pension. That is what happens from the salary. A particular amount actually these days are cut, okay, so that it will be provided as your pension when you retire on your superannuation. But before 2004, what happened? The government was giving pension to all the government employees, okay, without taking any kind of contribution from them, okay. So this was the old pension scheme. But when the NDA government actually came to power after 2004, this old pension scheme was actually done away with, and then the national pension scheme actually came. Let us see how both the schemes differ from each other. So if you see, this is the old pension scheme and this is the new pension scheme. In the old pension scheme, it involves only the government employees, but then this is more inclusive, okay. So it's open to all the citizens, including government employees, the self-employees, as well as the unorganized workers. If you see the pension type, this is guaranteed pension and this is market-linked pension, okay. Guaranteed means the government itself will actually give out of its pocket to the government employees who have retired. But this is market linked as in what? Every month, whatever is the amount of money that is cut from your salary actually gets collected in the pool of the national pension scheme, okay. So that pool of funds will be there and that will be invested in some stocks or shares and all in the stock market, and depending upon the market fluctuation, okay, the high or lower, then what happens? Your pension will actually be paid, okay. So that is what is meant by market linked pension. Next one, contribution. No contribution from the employees because it was fully funded by the government. Here, the employee has to contribute 10% of his basic salary plus the dearness allowance, okay, which is adjusted for inflation, whether 4% or 2%, whatever it is, and the government contributes 14% of the basic salary plus the DA, okay. And again, this is for the government employees. Government will actually contribute only for government employees. For other people, their employer will contribute, okay, or they might not also. Next one, the pension calculation, 50% of the last non-basic salary plus the DA, okay. So this is actually provided, whatever, or the last drawn salary, and then the DA is on the last 10 months of earnings that they get. Whichever is higher is actually given to them. The next one is pension based on the accumulated corpus and its return subject to market performance, okay. Again, this is market performance based, okay. So this is the difference between the OPS and the NPS. Then following inflation adjustment, pension amount increases with the DA and it is revised twice a year. And here, no automatic inflation adjustment. Returns completely dependent on your market fluctuations. Next one, advantages, guaranteed income and no contribution from our pocket. But here, higher potential returns will actually be given because it is market dependent. Flexibility, tax benefits, regulated and transparent investment options are also there. Next one, disadvantages. Obviously, this is a financial, it's a bane, right, to the government, and it will be unsustainable on a longer run. Next one, pension amount here is not fixed. That is the major problem, and market dependent return. Sometimes you do not know how volatile the markets can be. And also to understand this, you need to have financial literacy, where India actually lacks that. Okay, so this is the difference between OPS as well as the National Pension Scheme. Now let us understand about the Unified Pension Scheme. So there was this committee, that is the TV Somnath Committee, that was actually appointed in the year 2023, where they brought about a unified pension scheme which unified or combined the features of the old as well as the National Pension Scheme. Okay, do you understand this? Now let us see what are the characteristic features. This also gives you an assured pension. Okay, so like the OPS, the UPS also guarantees a pension amounting to 50% of the basic pay, okay, over the last 12 months before the retirement, provided the person has actually, or the employee has qualified or continued his service for 25 long years. And also there is assured minimum pension for those who are retiring after 10 years of service. Then there is actually a guaranteed return of rupees 10,000 per month. Family pension, in case the retiree actually dies, then what happens? Their immediate family is eligible to 60% of the last drawn pension amount, not the salary. Okay. Next one is inflation indexation. That is, the dearness allowance will be provided to account for what? The inflation. Okay. And it is calculated based on the consumer price index, where you actually have the basket of goods that are consumed by the consumers and so on. Then the lump sum payment, a lump sum will be paid. That is, when will all this money actually come? Whichever is getting deposited from your salary into that pool, when does it do they give you? Whether monthly they give you? No, on your superannuation, that is on your retirement day, a lump sum amount of money will actually be provided to you. Okay. Now, who can avail the UPS? It is accessible to all the central government employees who have retired under the NPS since 2004. Here, employees can actually choose to switch from NPS to the UPS, but once you switch, you cannot go back. Okay. So, while the UPS is currently for the central government employees, if you want, the states can also adopt this option for the other employees accordingly. Do you understand? Okay, so this is actually the NPS, OPS as well as the UPS. And now is the last article for the day: production of indigenous light combat aircraft, that is LCA. These are lighter in weight and these are combat aircrafts which are deployed in the air forces. That's it. It's very, very simple to understand. Okay, so here LCA Tejas is what we are going to discuss, and this is a part of defense indigenization and self-reliance, and this is actually going to what? Replace the MiG, okay, fighter jets, and this has been imported from Russia, and they played a very, very crucial role during the Kargil war and so on. Okay, so next one we'll discuss about what is DRDO also, topic important for prelims as well as the mains. Now let us actually move forward. So previous year question 2014, there was a question on Agni 4 missile. This time also in 2025 there was question on what is it, Axiom mission, and then the SpaceX mission as well as the Gaganyaan mission. Which of the following actually studied microgravity? So recently there was a question on that. Okay, so you actually have to be aware about all these missions and what are their mission objectives. So the DRDO has recently conducted a successful test of the life support system, or the integrated life support system. They just conducted a trial of this life support system of the Tejas. Okay, so Tejas is a light combat aircraft and it actually has different variants. So let us see about this particular light combat aircraft Tejas. Okay, so this is a single engine. Very important, UPSC asks questions like this. Okay, and it is lightweight and it is a multi-role fighter. Okay, not designed only for one purpose. Next, the developer is the ADA, that is Aeronautical Development Agency, along with Hindustan Aeronautic Limited. They actually developed this, and this is going to replace the MiG-21 fleet I told you. And then the LCA program of India, Light Combat Aircraft program, actually started only in 1984. Okay, so name Tejas, that actually means radiance in Sanskrit. The role is, it actually has air superiority because it's multi-role, right? Not only that, the ground attack is also there, as well as the reconnaissance is also there. Now let's see the key features. See, don't don't just get carried away by all these things. Just look at these points. They have the delta wing configuration. Okay, that is high maneuverability. Okay, during flight. The second one, This actually is equipped with fly-by wire flight control system. Okay, so this is actually very quick and responsive handling by the pilot. It helps the pilot in handling it efficiently. So fly-by wire flight control system. Next one, it features active electronically scanned array radar. So it has a radar. Okay, so it can actually go through, or you can say move through, the advanced target detection and tracking devices also. Okay, so this is what we actually read in one of the classes that we dealt with day before yesterday. Please recall and mention in the comment section about what missile did we actually discuss. Okay, next, LCA Tejas is armed with beyond visual range missiles. Okay, that is, it can actually target the enemy targets at a very long distance also. It can target, and then it has multi-role capability. So it is actually used for it has air superiority, the ground attack, and the reconnaissance is there. It is cost effective also because it is of its lower operational and maintenance cost. Okay, now let's look at the different variants of Tejas. We had Mk1, then 1A, 2, and then we have the Tejas trainer and the LCA Navy. Okay, so each for different purposes, like it is in service with the IAF, Indian Air Force. The next Mk1A, advanced radar and then beyond visual range missiles are actually there. Then Mk2 is there. This is under development to replace the Jaguar, Mirage 2000, etc. Then you have the Tejas trainer. This is a twin seat version of the pilot training. Next one is LCA Navy. Okay, now let us move forward. About the DRDO, it is the premier R&D organization under the Ministry of Defense. This we know, and focuses on indigenous development because we are trying to. First one is Make in India. Next one, indigenization of defense, and Atmanirbhar, self-reliant, and developed by it has actually developed the key components of the LCA, like the all this is not important. You can just ignore this. Next one. Now, based on today's discussion, let us solve a mains question. Okay, so what does the question read? India's recent GDP and GVA estimates point to a deceleration. Yes, the economic momentum has actually reduced when compared to that of the previous year, and highlight the structural concerns, especially in the manufacturing sector. Now discuss the implications of these trends on employment and the overall economic resilience. So, didn't we actually discuss about this particular article? Yeah, we did. So now let us actually look at the approach answer. So you will say the MOSPI has actually come up with 2 data sets, that is GDP, GVA and all, and then we see the real GDP, how it has actually decelerated when compared to the previous year, and how manufacturing has actually performed bad, or you can say lesser than that of the agriculture. So this actually shows the weakening of our economic fundamentals. Okay, so this is what, and then this has actually further contributed to the unemployment. So there is reverse migration also. That is why there is more agricultural activity over here, and also inflation is there, indicated by the gap between real and the nominal GDP to the economic. This actually adds to the economic stress as well. Next, in the conclusion, you will actually have to say that how it is important for us to build a very resilient economy by boosting and focusing on manufacturing, by skilling our workforce, as well as creating the labor intensive jobs for our economy, and that is what will lead us to inclusive as well as sustainable growth. Okay, now let's move forward to solve the prelims practice questions. With reference to the centrally sponsored schemes and sector schemes in India, consider the following statements. The first one, CSS are funded by, that is centrally sponsored scheme are fully funded by the central government. No, it is actually shared by the central government as well as the state governments, right? Next one, the central sector schemes are implemented by the state governments. No, this is wrong. So these statements are interchanged. This is also wrong. This is also wrong. The Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin is an example of centrally sponsored scheme. Yes, this is correct. And the next one is the PM Kisan scheme is an example of central sector scheme. Yes, this is also correct. Okay, so 3 and 4 are correct. Your answer is option B. The next question is the vigilance defense, not vigilance, village defense committees. You know this, right? Yesterday we actually discussed about the BSF, the border security force, training the civilians, okay, in the backdrop of the recent Falgam attack in Jammu and Kashmir. So they are often seen in news. They are primarily formed to, one, promote local governance and community development. No. Next one is provide arms and training to civilians to defend against militant attacks. Yes, this is correct. Since this is correct, this and this will be wrong. So the answer is option B. We saw the village defense committees that were actually replaced by the village defense guards also, VDGs. Okay. Next, let's move to the last question. Let us consider, with reference to the loitering munitions, consider the following. They are designed to return to base after completing surveillance mission. No. These are suicide missions. Okay. So they actually see the target and then they actually are on a suicide mission. They don't return back and all. Okay. After completing the mission, they don't return to the base. So this is wrong. They can autonomously identify and strike the targets. Yes. India has indigenously developed loitering munitions like Nagastra. Yes, these are all very specific ones and you need to know it. So 2 and 3, 1 is actually wrong. So all these become wrong and this is option B. Okay. So now let us actually move forward. There is a question on Ahilyabai Holkar, our discussion today. And the next one is with respect to the UPS and how it is different from that of the NPS as well as the OPS. And the last one is about LCA. Tejas, that is light combat aircraft. Okay, so with this we've actually come to the end of our DNA discussion. I hope you actually liked the session. For further videos, please do like, share and subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel, and I will meet all of you in yet another live session very soon. Thank you and have a good day.